Hey, this is Richard Chancey with richardchancey.com, and today I wanted to talk to you about 6 reasons you absolutely need a webinar inside of your sales funnel. Before I dive into that, let me talk to you about a dynamic that I noticed a few years ago in my own sales business. Let me back all the way up and talk about my dad for a little bit. My dad worked for an insurance company for 30 years. He actually owned his own office, and every day my dad showed up to that office. He went in, he sat down at his giant desk, and he did one of 3 things. He started networking, he started cold calling, or he started following up with people that had already done business with him and started asking for referrals. So fast forward about 30 years to when I was about 38 or 39 years old, I took a step back and realized I was doing the same thing to sell that my dad did. In fact, the same thing my dad did, and also my granddad. My granddad was a part-time pastor / part-time coffee salesman to restaurants. And I realized that I was doing the same things they were doing, which was wake up every day and try to add sales to the funnel, to the process, and just try to add closes. And then about 7 or 8 years ago, a buddy of mine said, hey, you really should have a webinar to sell what you're doing now, which was, I was doing church construction consulting, and the economy was not so great. And I realized that if I didn't do something different, I was going to starve to death. And I actually was having that conversation with a buddy of mine who was in the church space, but he was selling digital products. And he said, hey, I bet you could put together a webinar and generate a bunch of leads and sales for your church construction consulting. And I thought, man, maybe he's right. And so I put together my first webinar. That was about 6 or 7 years ago now. And we were off to the races after that. So I wanted to talk to you today just about why you should have a webinar that's running 24/7 in your business. So I'm going to dive into these 6 ways or 6 reasons. Now, before I do that, let me just tell you this. If you are already convinced that you need a webinar and you just don't know where to get started, I have got a good starting point for you. Go over to webinar.com and register for my webinar. I'm going to spend an hour brain dumping everything that I've learned about doing webinars in that hour. When you're done, you're going to have a very specific strategy for putting together your webinar. I went overboard with this training, trying to make sure that you walk away with that, with something that you can actually use today in your business. Okay, if you're not convinced you need a webinar, let me run down these 6 things for you. The first reason is to build your list, or the way to say that now is to build an audience or a tribe. Now, a list used to mean that years ago you could buy an email list. Okay, kids, don't buy an email list anymore. Okay, it's not illegal for you to buy an email list. It's just illegal for you to put it into an email service provider and send emails to them. Be real clear on that. You need to build a list, which means you give something of value to people, and in return they give you their name and email address, so you earn the right to add value to those people until they're ready to take your next step. Now, it used to be the focus was, let's build an email list, build an email list, build an email list. Now, while we're still trying to build email lists, we're also building audiences. Now, how does that work? Well, you can build an audience just based off of people, how people interact with you online. For instance, you're watching this video. We're a few minutes in. We've actually put you into a bucket where we know what your level of interest is based on how much of this video you've watched. Yes. Now building audiences is as simple as adding value and engaging people, and then we can measure and act appropriately based on that interaction. All right, sorry for stumbling a little bit. That's the peril of going live, kids. You're going to fumble and stumble through some of this. So you want to build your list, your email list, and you want to build audiences. Those are definitely skills that you should start to kind of develop as a salesperson. We no longer live in the days where you can say, oh, I don't need to do that. I just need to keep hustling and grinding. Let me just tell you, now is the time to start building your platform. The second thing a webinar does is it clarifies your message. You're going to be forced to sit down and think through not just your value proposition, but all of the objections that your prospects have, and be able to overcome those in this automated format. It's not like sitting down across the table from somebody. You can't respond to them, so you have to anticipate that. And you might be thinking, well, Richard, that's the way I do it. Why would I want to make it where I can't be as responsive? Well, here's why. Because that webinar is going to run 24/7. And while you might be meeting with somebody today, you could be running a webinar and educating hundreds of people at the same time. In fact, today, I will run 17 webinars 3 times for 1 hour. Do the math. That's 51 hours of training that I will do today with people. And there will be people in every one of those webinars today. Think about how powerful. I'm going to do 51 hours of training in a 24-hour day. And most days I don't even really think about that training. So clarifying your message, thinking through that, and then your value proposition. The other thing in clarifying your message is it's going to make you slow down and think through, how do people buy from me? Okay, what do they do first? And then what do they do after that? You're not going to sell a $3 million church consulting project or a consulting product or high-end ticket sales item on a webinar. What you can do is educate people and get them comfortable with taking the next step, which might be a phone call, which is exactly what I talk about in this advanced webinar systems webinar that we've got available for you at webinarwebinar.com. Okay, the next thing, skills development. Hey, there are skills as salespeople that we need to develop today that nobody told us about, right? When you hear about sales skills development, most time you talk about the number of calls you make, how you open the door, how you get past the gatekeeper, how you close people, how you get people to take the next step with you on the phone. Nobody's teaching you how to build an email list. Nobody's teaching you how to make an offer online. Nobody's teaching you how to ideate, shoot, edit, and launch video. Here's the thing. Those things are absolutely necessary if you're going to compete in the future. These online platforms, Facebook and YouTube, Facebook gets 2.27 billion unique visitors a month. YouTube gets 1.9 billion unique monthly visitors. Let me just tell you this. If I told you that everybody in your audience was going to show up at an event today, would you want to go be there? Well, if you don't, then something's wrong with you. Absolutely, you'd want to go be there. Let me tell you, everybody you're trying to reach, they're on these platforms. And we're going to talk about how to leverage these platforms to get people to take the next step, which might be a webinar. And then the step after that might just be a phone call. And then you've got your normal sales process. So skills development is a huge reason to do this. Webinars give you a reason to develop these skills. The third thing, the fourth thing, it positions you as an expert. Now, we've spent a few minutes on this video talking to each other, right? There's a few things that you know about me so far. You know that I've sold high ticket, that I've been in the church space. You can reach some conclusions about me. You know that I'm good or bad at shooting video like this. You know that I've got a little bit of a speech impediment. Hopefully what's happening is you're starting to feel like there's some sort of connection between us. And what I call that is indoctrination. But indoctrination means that you're spending time with your prospects and they begin to understand you as a person, not just you as a salesperson or you've got something that you're trying to get them to do, right? So we want to be able to position ourselves as an expert. And doing webinars and videos like these, any of this stuff, it really gives people a better picture of who we are. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, a short video is worth 1,000,000,000, okay? The next thing is it polishes your sales presentation or your presentation skills. This is just another great reason to do webinars. It's going to make you do something over and over and over again that right now, which is close, which is ask for the business, you may only be doing that infrequently right now when you're sitting in front of a prospect. When you do a webinar or you do videos like these, what happens is you find those words coming off your tongue more and more and more and more. Just like this. Hey, if you think there's any way that you might want to do webinars in your future, click webinarwebinar.com, click the button in the link or the button underneath the video and go sign up for that thing and I'll see you in that webinar. You see how it's easy to transition into your closes the more that you practice them. So polish your presentation skills. That's a huge benefit of doing webinars. Oh, this is a really big one, this next one. It's going to help you create, webinars help you create a non-threatening sales environment. Let me tell you what that means. I can twist your arm right here on this video. Let me do that for a second. It's not your intention, it's your direction that determines your destination. For most of you, the direction that you're going in doesn't end up where you want to be. Let me tell you this, as a 47, 48-year-old guy, however old I am as I'm shooting this, most of my friends that have been in sales for years, many of my friends who are high six-figure income earners, you know what's happening to them in their late 40s and their early 50s? Losing their jobs, right? And then what do they do for the next 6 months to a year? They try to find that $300,000 job as an entry-level position, and they go around looking and they think, well, I've been so good at this, I've done it for 25 years, this, you know, they should want to hire me, these people are going to want to talk to me, and blah, blah, blah. Turns out they don't. In fact, when you lose that job, you ain't getting it back, kids. That's why it makes a ton of sense to build platforms where you're building an email list and you're building some assets and you're building some intellectual capital in the marketplace. Video gives you the opportunity to twist the arm. So that whole story I just told right there about people losing their jobs, that absolutely can happen to you. Every single friend of mine that's lost their job thought it couldn't happen to them. Even when the guy right next to them had it happen to them, they thought, nah, but I'm better than that. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. So let me just twist your arm. Right now is the time to start building some sales skills. It's time to build some presentation skills, to build a platform, to build a presence in the marketplace. I always ask people this. If I'm completely wrong about this and you're still working in the same job 5 years from now, but you've got 5,000 people on your email list that are your ideal client avatar, let's just say that 5 years later you do lose your job. How hard is it going to be to find another job if you've got 5,000 people on your email list? I can tell you from experience, not freaking hard. And the second thing is, you're probably not going to want to go to work for somebody else if you've got an email list with that many of your ideal client on it. You can just hang up a shingle and do it yourself. I tell you that because that's exactly what I did. I went from working for somebody else, built a small email list. I had 1,700 pastors on my email list when I left my job, and I started this consulting business on my own. And I ate and lived indoors for the next couple of years based on that email list. Now, fast forward 7 years, I've built a whole business around building these webinars and selling products online, from high-ticket consulting to digital products. So the evolution is absolutely possible. So that's my arm twisting. Now think if I'm sitting across the table from you and I start going at you that hard, where I start talking about your future and I start making predictions. It feels really personal. But here on video, it's just me twisting your arm, and you can turn it off anytime you want to. That's just another reason that you should be doing webinars. And here's the thing. If I haven't convinced you, turn it off, and let's never speak in this virtual way again. But if there's anything in you that wants to do a webinar, I promise you, this webinar I created is not like the other webinars that you've seen or other people you've heard talk about this kind of training. I actually do this for a living. I have actually sold high-ticket consulting. In fact, in 2012, that company I was working for did $12 million in church construction across 5 salespeople. One person was selling, this guy. Okay, so the bottom line is this stuff works. It will work in any business, and I would love to see you inside of the training. Go ahead and click the button and get started now. Otherwise, I hope to see you here on another live stream again, where we can do a little more arm twisting. If you've got comments or questions, or you think I'm full of it, just put them in the comments below this video. And if I can help you or serve you or answer those questions, or if you just think I'm wrong, feel free to disagree with me. Thanks so much, and I will catch you on tomorrow's live stream video. Thanks, Richard Chancey with richardchancey.com. Don't forget to visit webinarwebinar.com and sign up for our advanced webinar systems training.